Dr. Craig with AI, and I'm delighted to have Thomas with us, one of the founders of Eduaide, an incredible teacher productivity tool. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
And we can tell by your environment that you're actually a real teacher who's building this platform out for the rest of us. Thank you very much.
Of course, yes, not a set. It is indeed my actual classroom.
That's awesome. How do you manage your time, managing to be a software developer, marketer, promoter, and a teacher?
Lots of the finest organic suspension ever devised, coffee. That helps. Just a well-regulated calendar and schedule, and just try to trim the fat out of the day. Summers are nice. That allows you a little bit of time to do some catching up if you see that maybe you would like to be doing more with Eduaide. That helps. But yeah, it comes and goes. Less sleep than I'm accustomed to, but hey, in the name of providing teachers with a resource that they can use to plan and deliver instruction to their students. I mean, that's a large effect size, and that's something I take seriously. So happy to do it.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, why don't you tell us about your journey, where you come from, how
Mhm.
you ended up being here, being a teacher, founder, entrepreneur, and everything. So tell us your background.
Whew. Well, I mean, if we're going to go into being a teacher, that goes all the way back to my junior year in high school. I was gung ho on going to law school. My 11th grade world history teacher, he's actually on our board. He talked me out of it. He said, "I think you'd make an incredible teacher. I think you'd be great at it." My senior year, my elective class was being his assistant. I shadowed him. I made his copies. I took all of his materials. He kind of just mentored me in what it is to be a teacher. It taught me a lot. I got more out of that than I probably got out of my 4 years in my teacher prep program, although it was a wonderful program. But that's just a testament to how great my mentor, Mr. Clare, was and still is. From there, I did my undergraduate work in secondary education. I started teaching in Maryland. So I moved. I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, as is my co-founder, interestingly enough, but we didn't know each other then. I moved to Maryland, started teaching, taught across the hall from a guy named Thomas Hummel. My name's Thomas Thompson. I had two Thomases. We grew up like 15 minutes from each other, never met each other until we started teaching. And COVID hit first year. I started teaching 2019, 2020. And maybe it was, as a teacher, maybe it was good that it hit my first year. I'm still flexible. I can still learn pretty quickly. I'm not set in my ways with methods that I've been using for, year in, year out. I didn't really have an established practice. So it was easy for me to adapt to the asynchronous and synchronous online distance learning. But it was there that Thomas and I saw a number of issues kind of put in stark relief in that would be kind of these disjointed curricular documents, the inadequacy of canned content, getting it from just textbooks or curriculum resource sites, and that not really being at the level that my students needed it to be, not meeting them where they're at, which required an immense amount of differentiation and personalization to meet their needs on a very limited planning time. If I was teaching three different courses that 1 year, and I only had one prep, so that's 1 hour to plan for three classes, which is really untenable. So you end up taking a lot of work home, which is probably fine in your 20s. But, as you get older and you start to have maybe a family and you're trying to think about, how you're spending your days and your hours, even if you are incredibly passionate about teaching, you might want to, have some time to actually read about education, perhaps, or look at some of the research and figure out how to adopt that into your practice. But if you spend all your time rushing to try to catch up, you're not really getting good, meaningful planning time done. You're getting the catch-up planning time. I need to get a worksheet in front of these kids so I can fill the time. And the moment you start talking about filling time is the moment you stop forgetting about methods and techniques of instruction and actually, what it means to facilitate learning. So those were some issues that we saw. COVID ended. Well, we went back to school, that is. And I started grad work, studied open educational resources. I was building out a community for teachers to share openly licensed resources with one another. But then there was a number of things around quality control, buy-in, network effects that you needed to set up. So you needed a lot of people to share those resources. And right around that time, when I was starting to feel totally hopeless by the whole prospect of an open educational resource community with verifiable teaching resources and methods for verifying evidence-based techniques. Thomas Hummel reached out to me and said, hey, generative AI is a really interesting technology. I've been playing with it and using it to create resources for my class. You want to join a project a friend and I are working on? Totally, let's do it. Hop in, and we started building out Eduaide from there. And really from that moment, it was strip away all the technology, what problems do we want to solve? How do we want to close the research to practice gap? How do we want to, we can't give teachers more planning time, but we can condense the amount of time it takes to do any one task in planning. So how can we do that to empower teachers to explore new methods and techniques? And that's been a question we've been asking ourselves now for the last year and a half.
So the format of Eduaide and the way that it's designed and laid out, it is, I agree with you, it's stripped down, and so that you can actually see exactly what you need when you need it, and it's organized in quite an easy way to understand it. I'm going to have some pictures, picture in picture, when I do the editing of this so that people can see it, Thomas. And I really like the way that across the top we've got planning, information objects, independent practice, cooperative learning, gamification, and questions. And as we move through the subjects in the year, the different grade levels, those tools change depending on what's appropriate for that level and subject and the type of tool that you're using. And I like that it's really responsive like that. Did you do a lot of iteration to get it to that stage? It seems to be similar right from the beginning, that's laid out like that purposefully.
So this layout, I mean, there's been modifications to it just in order to get it to work kind of seamlessly. But this is the layout that we wanted from the beginning because it solves really two fundamental problems for us. One is, how do we integrate the variety of tools a teacher may use in the course of planning a lesson all in one workspace? We are over clicking between 3 different tabs, or, I want this resource, and then it takes me to a new page and I type in everything that I want, and then I hit generate, takes me to a new page, and then I have the tool itself. No, we wanted everything to be, I can stack different resources to create a sequence of instruction that works for me. So the part of that is I want granular control for the teacher. They should be able to go in on a very fine level and get exactly what it is that they want for their class. Secondarily, it solves a problem or mitigates a problem around hallucinations, a common boundary condition of artificial intelligence, which is, as the AI has no firm understanding of our language, it'll produce information that is statistically correct but factually inaccurate, which sounds it's funny to say out loud, right? How can something be statistically correct and factually inaccurate? Well, the information, the word that it is using pops up a lot in its data set, so it plugs that word in, even though that word itself does not have any bearing in the actual, embodied world that we live in. So that might be changing the end of the Civil War in America from 1865 to 1866, right? A very subtle but confident falsification. How do you avoid that? What we found is that the range of affordances for generative AI are not as clear as they may seem. Things you might think the AI can do really well, it can't do at all, really. Mathematics being one. There's a number of things you can do to strengthen math responses, and we're investigating many, including maybe partnering with computational engine providers to be able to ground those in more reliable information. But also what we found is that if you break the task that you're asking the AI to do into its smallest component part and start there, you can more easily verify the information time and time again through our back-end product testing. And that's what we did. Make everything really small, make everything modular so everything can exist independently of itself. Then give the teacher the tools to then take those pieces and kind of paste them together to make the lesson that works for them. So instead of saying, make me an assessment, we ask the AI to provide 3 multiple choice questions, but then we provide, in context learning on what a multiple choice question is and what role it should function, and, how tricky should the, distracting answers be, and, where should the answer fall? Is it always going to fall on C every time you ask the AI to generate it? How do you have a range of different A, B, and C being correct, right? I've thought a lot about multiple choice questions, more than I ever thought I would in my life. And in asking those questions and then building out for those affordances using maybe retrieval augmented generation, that is, using a reference text for the AI to pull from, using few shot prompts so that you're able to give it kind of a chain of examples to follow, and then through careful structuring of what the context of the material is, you can limit a lot of the hallucinations, but also empower the teacher to be the core driver of action. Probably more than you bargained for in that answer, but that's kind of the thought behind it.
The retrieval of documents to
Mhm,
refine down what the
mhm,
generative AI is focusing on as its base source of information.
mhm.
Inside of TeachAid, have you got a number of documents and a knowledge base in there, or is it going live out to the internet every time to create something?
So that's an arc. Okay, so I got to give you an architectural note about the site, and then I think I can give you, with that context, we'll be able to better answer it. So Eduade's set up to be like a model garden in that we connect teachers with various large language models suited to the task that we are asking it to do. That's how we're able to offer Eduade at such a low price point compared to the other AI tools out there. It's like, yeah, you want to use GPT-4 for some things that would require GPT-4, but you also have to understand there are unique affordances for 3.5 Turbo that you can use to, limit costs. That might be, say, generating a list of countries by GDP in 1998, right? That's something that GPT 3.5 could do, no problem. But more modern things, GPT-4 is required. Things that might require a level of, I don't want to say creativity from the AI, but maybe a level of reasoning that you're not going to get in 3.5 that is more readily apparent in 4, although I hesitate to call it reasoning for a number of philosophical positions, but we don't have to get into that in the effort of time. So we use our prompt engineering, we use the in-context learning, and we use the examples to ground a lot of our generations. We are currently partnering with like openly licensed textbook providers to use their textbooks as a way to
Okay,
ground generations on, say, informative texts, our reading comprehension. Really, most of the information objects are what we are working on currently in building retrieval augmented generation frameworks around. So
right.
they are not out just yet. I want to make that clear. That is what we are actively working on right now. So right now it's still the prompt engineering examples. I would say pretty bespoke prompt structures that we're inserting the teacher's topic within and kind of actively constraining what the AI can pull from on our site.
Great, great. And I noticed that the workspace on the right-hand side, which is a great thing to see your content being generated, and then
Mhm,
choosing other different tools as well to add to the workspace. You have this body of teaching, learning, and assessment tools that you can use for an
mhm,
entire unit over a period of time, and it never gets lost. And that's a really good thing. Um, so I really like that. And secondly, on the workspace on the right-hand side, that everything is saved in the history. And
mhm,
also then there are prompts. So I'm generating some things, and I can see that my hand has been raised automatically by Zoom with its AI or machine learning from my hand being up. So once those objects are created in the workspace, then there are prompts to encourage me to think, oh, maybe I need a multiple choice test now. Maybe I need
mhm,
something else. And I think that's really clever because I might have not have thought of that. And at 3
mhm.
a.m. in the morning, I'm thinking I should have had a quick little assessment to do,
Yeah.
a formative assessment of where they're at based on that knowledge. So I really like that those prompts are happening. What are some of the secrets that you could share with us in your development pipeline of what's coming up with Eduaide?
Secrets. Yeah, I mean, not many secrets. We're happy to be open about what people can expect from us. It also keeps us honest. We can't go out and say we're going to do something and then never do it.
Nice.
A couple of things that we are really interested in right now, using, and this is a tricky problem. It's a lot of fun. Um, how do we get the how do we prompt the generative AI in such a way as to return mermaid syntax, which you need to create charts, right? Flow charts,
Mm,
things like that. So we're prompting the AI in order to return to us the syntax necessary to translate into charts. So Venn diagrams, flow charts, concept maps,
right.
so teachers can engage in multimodal instruction. So that's one area that we're going, multimodal. And there's interesting ways to do that. Not sure, maybe the mermaid direction will be the best way. That syntax is sometimes breaks and we want something a little more reliable. So we're experimenting with some other solutions there. So multimodal. Second is I really can't shake my love for open educational resources and the open sharing of materials for learning. So a lot of the questions around who owns the outputs are still being litigated all over the place. This general consensus seems to be that The person who's prompting certainly does not own the output. It's not clear that the company that made the AI doesn't really look like they own the output either. It's hard to assign ownership to AI outputs, even if they are inspired by another artist's work. So it's not clear that that artist who created the original work in a training set would have ownership. So if nobody has ownership, what does that mean? Does that mean it's in the public domain? Does that mean it is protected by a Creative Commons attributions license where you have to just say, I got this from someone who was using AI, and you give the person's name? We're taking the approach that it is somewhere in that either public domain or Creative Commons attributions licensing arrangement. So we're building a community on that premise, the open sharing of educational related AI outputs with contextual notes about why you made it. So if you made it for a classroom with 4 students that are English language learners or something like that, you would be able to share that to our community. And then other teachers are like, oh, I have a very similar context. I too am working with 4 students who are English language learners, and I too teach 8th grade social studies. So you use that teacher's material as your starting point. Then you could take it into Eduaide and do even more personalization with it. As you mentioned, there's a number of prompts that we have built around that aren't quite generative. They're not making new material, but they might extract keywords from the existing material and provide you with a glossary or create a multiple choice question set on the material. So being able to take pre-existing teacher-made material vetted by them and then using that in your classroom is a powerful tool that we're working on. We also think it's important for checking and balancing the power of artificial intelligence. You have the individual intelligence of the teacher who's prompting the AI. You have the artificial intelligence trained on massive amounts of internet data. Then you have the collective intelligence of teachers in this community, essentially using and verifying one another's work, creating a community of practice, but is distributed through space, free of geographic constraints. My first job, I was the only person teaching what I taught, so I didn't have anyone to work with. I didn't have anyone to speak to. I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off of. I could talk to the teacher who's a year under me or the year above me, but it's not quite the same. Having a community that is distributed would allow me to, interact with teachers who are teaching what I teach. And then third, building out some sort of, this is for when we license with school districts, providing value at the administrator level, right? A lot of information is siloed to the classroom and doesn't get out there. You can use grades as like a marker, but we find that with grade inflation and the state of grade books being what they are, doesn't necessarily seem to be the best marker for a student's learning. So that might be building out a tool for remediation. So let's say you generate something on Eduaide and it's aligned to a specific standard, and you find that the students struggled on that. Well, you go back to Eduaide, you pull up that old assignment, and you, under our transform button, which you see you'll have the things around like translating, things like that. There'll be a button that says remediate, which is the prompt structure would be something along the lines of student did not have the prior knowledge necessary to access this material. What is the requisite prior knowledge to access this material? Use that requisite prior knowledge to develop a assignment to close the gap between what the student needs to know in order to access the to be learned material. And then the admin would be able to see, oh, hey, I have X number of teachers in 8th grade mathematics who all have students struggling on this standard. They can go back and develop some policy around that and say, working with their instructional teams on saying, hey, you need to address this standard in a different way as we are finding many students are struggling, etc. So creating an ecosystem. So the institutional context, the collective context, the individual context, and the artificial intelligence's context can kind of work together in a way that isn't so siloed and removed from one another. That's kind of the big vision. That's down the road. We're working on that. I don't think there's an easy way to get there just yet, but those are our 3 big streams.
I like that concept of it's really about evaluation. At the end, teachers should always evaluate their process, their design, student success and achievement. The remediation is an incredibly powerful component to that evaluation process, to look back and go, what did we have to spend more time on so we're not doing it as good as we could? In essence, I really like that. I like also that you've got the opportunity to open up the chat on the left-hand side and actually chat inside the safe environment of Eduaide and actually create some prompts, and the feedback bot as well, the feedback on assignments where you can drop in the assignment and get some feedback generated. Very, very good for a beginning teacher to see some structure and some ways of
Yeah.
responding, and maybe pick up some trends and some feedback opportunities that maybe they didn't think of because they don't yet have that pedagogical content knowledge. So I can imagine that beginning teachers would progress much more quickly in their development because they have a much richer source of examples, not just their supervising mentor teacher who's really busy and gets to meet with them once every couple of weeks. So I think that's really a really great tool that you've put in there. Going forward, if people have feedback ideas for Eduaide because might be they're using another platform or they see a need within their classroom, what's the best way for them to feed that information to you and request a feature inside the platform?
Really, there's three ways you can go about that. On our site, there's an area to leave feedback, like right in the platform itself. I think it says like support or something like that. You click on that, just send us an email, and we'll respond. Social media is also a great way. Just DM us, let us know. And then we have a Discord for our users where we're always
Right.
bouncing ideas off of one another. And if they have any questions, it's a great place to post it.
Wonderful. And tell us about the membership. I think I'm on the free version. So tell
Mhm.
us about the membership plans and opportunities.
Yes, so there is a free version as you got it with Eduaide. It is admittedly, I think, a limited offering. It's 15 generations per month. That's the free version. Um, it resets every month. There's a limited context window for the feedback and the chat as well. But once you get to the paid version, that's $5.99 US. We've tried to pair the stripped down free version with a pretty low price point. So $5.99 a month or $49.99 a year will get you unlimited access to Eduaide, no content restrictions, a much bigger window for feedback, and a much bigger window for chat. There's no like tool restrictions between the free and paid. It's just a number of things that you can do, like how many times you can do it. That's the main difference.
Right. Thomas, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's great to talk to a real educator who's doing something really innovative for us. So thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.